Last but not least, if you're listening on the audio side or right now in front of you as the video you clicked on the YouTube side, PTF back with you. We're here to talk about the Kentucky Derby betting challenge from our friends at TwinSpires.com, a new major in the handicapping contest space. Must play, I would say, for the serious contest player. You can buy your way in for $5,000 over at TwinSpires.com, but maybe even better than that, you can win your way in. Go to TwinSpires.com, click on the tournaments tab for a full schedule now through Derby. A lot of great opportunities to win in and play. And we bring in to talk about it a man who is an aficionado when it comes to important live bankroll contests. He's won the BCBC, the biggest one of them, in fact. But he's also somebody who's been very active on this platform. We're going to talk some strategy today with Matt Miller. Matt, how are things?
Things are great. Hi, everybody.
What has been going on? You have been really stuck into these TwinSpires contests. How you were on a tremendous run. Has it continued?
It has not continued at the same pace, but essentially the same strategies continue to work. There are a few more formidable competitors out there now where it's clear they've read this book and we're all kind of doing some of the same kind of stuff, but it's honestly making it more fun. And going back on what you said a minute ago, they're doing a really good job at TwinSpires of making this tournament accessible. There are so many, and I'm not being paid for this. This is truly just a fan that I'm just very grateful for the creation of this platform with terrific customer service. There are feeders pretty much every day. Different feeders lead, are different price points. They lead to different kinds of tournaments. Some lead to the big one, to the Kentucky Derby Betting Challenge. Others give you what's kind of a second step where maybe this $200 feeder pays into an $800, which pays into the Derby. But, they've got all sorts of entries essentially preloaded because they've gotten so many seats out there. And for those that are afraid, and don't laugh because there are more of us than you realize, for those who are afraid of over qualifying, I'll laugh at myself because never in a million years did I think myself to be in that kind of a position. They'll work with you, whether they will help you find someone by the seat. And I can't speak for TwinSpires, so Darren, don't yell at me if I'm speaking out of turn. But if someone had 3 seats and you're only allowed 2 and they did everything they could, I wouldn't be shocked if TwinSpires allowed that to continue as contest credits. They're probably not just paying out the cash, but they've been so helpful and kind from a customer service perspective. They're also just very available. So ask them questions. I've got buddies that'll text me saying, what do you think they're doing with this? And my answer is Darren would have gotten back to you faster than I did. It's really remarkable how quickly they're doing that.
So that's great. I'll share the screen here for the platform itself. I think I can make it full screen. Let's see if that'll work. Oh yeah, that looks a little better. That's the main TwinSpires screen. All you have to do is navigate over to tournaments, and then you will see the full schedule of events, including a game you're playing in at this moment, I believe.
So do me a favor, just to make this fun and potentially embarrassing, click on that top one where it says register. And it's going to take me to the leaderboard, and this is either going to be good news or bad news right now.
I'm not. Where does it have the leaderboard here?
Keep going. You're getting there.
Oh, there we go. Let's see. I see Matt Miller's name right there on the screen. See, folks, he doesn't just talk about this stuff. He's actually in there battling every day.
I'm losing by a buck.
I have 2 strategy questions for you as I get back to our regular layout here. I want to talk about the strategy for the feeders that you've been employing, but I do also want to spend a moment about talking about the big one and how you're thinking you're going to approach that, because I imagine there's a difference. You mentioned the book that you wrote. A couple of things just to button up for those who might be new. A lot of new people around here around Derby time. The book is A Better Way of Thinking that Matt wrote about his life and times in tournaments. A lot of strategy in there. A betterwayofthinking.com, the best place you can go to pick it up. You can find it other obvious places as well. But I know for Matt, a betterwayofthinking.com by far the best place. He also mentioned to Darren, that's Darren Sokali, who's done just a fabulous job with this platform and has been a frequent guest on our airwaves. Let's talk feeder strategy specifically. If somebody just needed to know one thing about playing in these feeders we were just plugging, what would it be?
Pay close attention to the size of the group of people playing. Pay close attention to the leaderboard and the number of seats that are paying out. And remember, drop your ego. If there are 4 seats at stake in a given tournament, first, second, third, and fourth are all worth the same. That is not true when you get to the big Kentucky Derby betting challenge where there's huge cash and other fun stuff. But in these feeders where you're playing for seats, focus on the seat. Focus on what it takes to get that. And so first place, sometimes someone will hit something huge. Yeah, just let them go. It doesn't matter. There's still seats 2, 3, and 4. And so for the smaller feeders, and I'm going to put this in, I'm not dumbing this down. I actually think it is this dumbed down. Most of these feeders are one hit and done. One really good hit. I don't mean with a minimum. I mean, you take your bankroll, you find a good 3, 4, whatever, one to shot, whether that's in Dutch exactas, whether that's daily doubles. You're seeing me using 2 hands because that each signifies a different entry. That's a huge part of my strategy, is using the 2 entries to essentially one of them help the other. But in these feeders, one hit is typically what it takes. I've had a couple of really good seasoned players lately almost aggressively make fun of me, saying, "Oh, it's Mr. Even Money Shot." Yeah, I take that with pride. I don't. They are not all created equal. I do take actually a lot of pride in my ability to try to segregate the ones that are good and the ones that aren't. And right. No, I don't just pick at every one of these. But yeah, look, it's no secret. My strategy in these tournaments is to find high strike rate plays. I got a question from a reader the other day who called and said, "How do you decide exacta or double?" I gave him the typical lawyer answer of it depends, but it really is just highly situational. What's your confidence level in the race before your big race or the race after? And if you don't like either of those, within the race, can you find a couple of exactas to do this with? Or is it maybe just a win bet if the price isn't too bad? Or is it not a great spot and you got to look elsewhere? So for these entry-level feeders, these are one and done for the most part. I'd say it's one act of big aggression followed by maybe a little bit of finesse at the end. You can see that I'm trailing by $1 to whoever that was. This is not going to therefore take a $200 shove to, that is not going to be my next play. I'm actually looking, it's the people behind me looking at that board that scare me. And so, right, for $1, I think I have one more minimum to do. And I'm then going to wait until the end and see what this takes. But this might take a more finesse type play of a $20 play versus, at the Breeders' Cup, at the Kentucky Derby Betting Challenge, I suspect you're going to see a lot more shoves at the end than you see in these other feeders.
Sure. And we'll get to the KDBC specifically, but that idea of which pool to choose, I'm assuming the advice really is try to grade your own opinion of the possible plays, right? You don't want to, if you have an A-level opinion in a race, and then in your next race you have a D-level opinion, you don't play the double in there. Either find a way to make the vertical work for you there, even if you're spreading a lot, right? I mean, or not a lot, but more than you would ideally. You've got to be conscious of the risk and reward, and you've got to be conscious of being true to your opinion.
Correct. And without getting too deep into this part of the strategy, don't forget you have cash as a weapon. And so if you get to a spot where you love a horse in one of the middle races, you can't make a pick in either of the races around it, so the double isn't feeling too good. And you look within this race, and there are 3 juicy exactas that, in your opinion, it's going to be one of these 3. But in your view, they don't quite pay enough to be able to play them across your 2 entries. This is the perfect situation for one entry is all in on this one entry is all in on this one, and then in cash, I'll probably hit that third one even a little harder knowing that I had equity in the prize pool that I'm not getting if that one hits. And
Right.
so I don't even mind it if I come up with a situation like that where there's a third outside the tournament. You just, again, be conscious. Clearly, my preference would be to have a situation where I just like two. I don't want to bet more money on the side if I don't have to, but it is a bit of a pressure release if you need that.
Another tool in the toolbox. We've only got a few minutes left on this particular segment, Matt, and there's so many follow-ups I already have for you. But here's one we've never talked about. You mentioned that about certain people joking about, not really joking, just, commenting on the fact that you tend to do this with the sledgehammer on the short price. Is there any reason why someone with a different wagering personality, someone who comes up with horses, more comfortable betting horses at prices, couldn't essentially adapt what you're doing to their own way of thinking? And maybe instead of that one, let's just use $100 as an example, instead of $100 on an even money shot, could find four to one shots, or something like that, and just spread that money across. It's really about the end goal more than it is. Your advice isn't play the even money shot. That's what works for you. Take this idea further, because we've actually never even talked about this.
So it's all about how to get there and what's the simplest, safest, easiest way to do it. Do you want to set up some intricate network of trifectas where you're trying to hit it so many times and blah blah blah, or what a win bet do? And if it's even a close call, whatever it is, Occam's razor, the simplest solution is the best, all else equal. I absolutely believe in that. And so my core bet is a win bet. I need the odds board to talk me out of that. And if 3 to 5 is all I'm getting, if the situation, when I call these early level feeders a one and done, that's not a 3 to 5 shot. That's probably a 3 or a 4 to 1 shot. And so I need to find a way to make that 3 to 5 shot 3 or 4 to 1. You can look at the preceding or the ensuing double. You could look at the exactas, but I'm trying to get to a target of about 3 or 4 to 1. Let's speed up the conversation a bit, because we're talking about the entry level feeders. Some of these feeders that maybe cost 80 or 160 or 200 to get in will put you into a feeder that costs 800 to get in. I would describe those, based on the nature of the prize pool, as being two hitters. You're not probably, unless you hit something really great. Speaking for myself and the way I play, I'm going to have to hit two things in those tournaments. So how I deploy my two entries, how I'm strategic about using one to help the other. I have to make decisions about when to do that and when to take those risks and whatnot. But the Saturday tournaments on TwinSpires are often that second level feeder where they're paying directly into the KDBC pool. And like I said, it's going to take a higher multiple. Please don't quote me on this exactly, but I'd say 3 or 4 to 1 typically does it on the smaller ones, maybe 6, 7, or 8 to 1. Although I think if there are experienced players watching, they're probably laughing, because there are plenty of times that the experts, the heavy hitters, will blow themselves up to the point that you would be shocked how low on the board some of these prizes go to. My buddy Howard Kravitz, I had the pleasure of calling him and saying, congratulations on third place in this tournament. You won $700. And he said, how is that humanly possible? I finished with $150. I said, right. Some of the people at the top weren't focused on the consequences of busting. They were focused on winning, and
that's crazy.
Just pay attention. There's definitely opportunity there. So,
and those numbers you're citing, 3, 4 to 1, you're talking about the multiple of the starting bankroll,
not the cost of the tournament, because some of that goes to the prize pool. I'm talking about what they gave you. So if it's a $500 entry, typically $250 in cash on your bankroll, $250 into the prize pool. And when I say this one's going to take about 4x, I mean 4x of 250, so to get to about $1,000.
Just wanted to clarify that. Just have a couple of minutes left, Matt. Maybe we'll have to come back for a whole other video, depending on, I'll let you cue me how much we can get into about the specific strategy for the big one. I mean, I imagine the idea is basically the same and the target changes, or are there more differences to the KDBC strategy?
There's a couple differences. So this one's going to behave, in my opinion, a lot like the Breeders' Cup. This became an instantaneous major as far as I'm concerned. Right there, in my opinion, after the Breeders' Cup with the Grade 1 gamble as circle this one, I'd love to win this or do well. The multiple required to do well in these larger tournaments is typically higher. And so I'm thinking more like the BCBC, probably somewhere in the range of 10 to 15x. I can tell you the presence of the Derby itself makes for a more confusing tournament. That race, for me, my sincere hope is that it's a hard pass. That is not my kind of race. And as much as I believe, I'm just going to guess, by the way, that the tournament ends on that race. I'm not trying to be negative on Darren if I'm wrong, but the best run tournaments tend to end on the big race. And so hopefully it's not going to end on some allowance race after, but if it does, so be it. Actually, my preference would be that it does, because I don't want to play the Derby. I don't like that. To me, I don't do very well in that race. Say again?
Too chaotic.
Exactly. And for my style of play, I mean, look, I guess if I was wounded and only had a little bit left, that's the perfect race to just take your shot with a few exactas, and you can make up an awful lot of ground. I would way prefer earlier in the card to find something more reasonable where I can at least get to a decent position for later. But my hope would be get to a decent balance. And typically I don't view hoping that no one catches me as a good strategy. But I think if the number can be high enough, maybe that'll be hard enough to do. We'll see.
You mentioned a couple of differences, so that's one. What else did you have in mind?
Well, just distinguishing a major from the other TwinSpires tournaments. I think the multiple required is going to be higher. I think the presence of the Derby itself is going to make that more difficult. And I guess the last thing I'll say is I would say there's an advantage to players who are playing the early races. Okay. Because I think a lot of people for that amount of money are going to feel stupid or embarrassed or not sure what to do with their day if they've blown their whole tournament stack so early in the day. And so if you can find something decent early, it might not be getting played in the tournament to the same extent something decent later will be played.
Yeah.
So that's going to be my strategy. It's my first year of actually attending the Derby. And so I've got plenty of stuff to look at and plenty of things to do, which gives me the freedom to just play it smart without having to focus about, do I care when in the day I lose?
Right. If you bust, so be it. I'm going to suggest that for you, another difference is that whereas in these other ones, participating high in the prize pool is great for you and you feel good about it, that there'd be an emotional value to winning a contest like this that might cause you to be a little bit more aggressive than you would normally.
Gosh, you as my editor, you spent so much time taming me. And right, I mean, we have lines in this book about I'm trying, my things where I can get better, areas for improvement. And I was sincere when you got me to say it, but I talked about achieving more in tournaments as opposed to winning more tournaments. Yes, this is one where I'm not listening to you. Winning really matters. I would just say, and there's nothing negative. Please, for anyone that knows me, I'm not trying to make anybody feel badly with anything I say. I cannot even begin to explain in a contest of this nature the difference between first and second.
Right.
It is immeasurable in terms of the way you feel about yourself, the credibility you have with your buddies, the credibility you have with your family who thinks you've sucked at this for all this time. It's really special. And I recognize there's a financial component that makes that not always the most responsible thing, which is why very much I preach about, are you in the right game in the first place? Are you playing in over your head? Because if you can't, not that you have to play crazy, but if making winning moves is too hard, it would signal to me that you're just in too big of a game. And as fun as this is, there are other tournaments on Derby Day. I'm not playing those. I want to play in the big one. But believe me, if I couldn't afford the big one, in a heartbeat, I'd be playing a smaller one. I would have a partner that I'd be playing with in the big one. That is not unlawful or illegal or against the rule. There's a way to do that perfectly legally where you and somebody else not in the tournament come together and
Of course.
put your money for an entry. Yeah, I would be doing all sorts of things to try to be a part of this, even if it meant saying, well, I'm not a big shot with $5,000. I'm a big shot with 500, and I'm going to play my own mythical tournament on the side and see how I would have done against the big boys. Yeah, and by the way, you might have a killer day, and if you make 15x on your money, the fact that you didn't collect anything in the prize pool is kind of a shame, but that would be an amazing accomplishment. And so you could even kind of play along that way. The bottom line is they've created something here that's really fun, and I think, frankly, once the Derby's over, I'm looking forward to what's next.
Yes.
I know that they're talking about getting other seats and other kinds of things into their prize pool. So for the time
We'll
being,
be reporting on it. We'll have that loaded for you in the Money Media YouTube channel. Subscribe over here. Check us out on the podcast side of things as well. In the Money Players podcast, we're going to keep you posted on everything going on with the TwinSpires.com platform. Matt will be back for more advice on tournaments as well. He's been a great resource, and if you want more from him, make sure you check out A Better Way of Thinking. Any closing thought from you, Matt, before we send this home?
I would say just keep plugging away. These are really fun tournaments. They offer all sorts of different racetracks. Some you may be attracted to, some you may not. But this model of winning a feeder to get into something else, like I said, they've been so good about rolling those contest credits forward that you're always playing for something. So, yeah, I look forward to seeing more friends' names on the leaderboard. It's these things have been growing and growing. It's been really fun.
Great stuff. Matt Miller, thank you so much. Check out abetterwayofThinking.com and check out the tournaments platform over on TwinSpires.com.